1 year ago. We open to a simple and barren bedroom. No decor, few pieces of furniture, clean, organized, quiet. It is the dark hours of the night. Rain and wind constantly beat against the room's sole window, and it's only in the occasional flashes of lightning that we see a small figure seated nearby. The massive cushioned chair makes his thin frame appear tiny, almost childlike, as if he weren't on the verge of his teenage years. A soft glow from the smartwatch on his wrist provides a vague outline of his gaunt and angular face. And in that glow, we can see that his smartwatch is typing out words as he speaks. Thunder roars. The storm intensifies. Suddenly, I alone am left to wonder, can anyone else hear the ways in which the muses call? Are there any other eyes that have pierced the veil? Perhaps, though it's doubtful such liberated thought exists in this glamoured city. Like Fae leading dumbfounded mortals into the glades, this city consumes the masses with bright, flashing lights and false idols. Heroes. There are no heroes. Everyone is self-serving. Every step taken to further one's ends. Villainy, though painted in a variety of colors, is routine. Villainy is core. For to be selfish is to be a villain, and everyone without fail is selfish. So few seem to understand this simple principle. I suppose gluttony is an addicting habit. It's consuming. Take, indulge. Who now even understands what hunger feels like? Who now even understands what it means to fear? Just retreat to fantasy. Retreat to ecstasy. Just do whatever it takes to escape your own overwhelming mortality. Yes, they are fools and cowards, too ignorant to understand that which they run from. But I am no fool. I've looked beyond the shallow masquerade orchestrated by those who would keep free thinkers like myself in the dark. And in the background I watch, unnoticed, and I learn. I see the weakness and the stupidity in others. I see their blindness. One day, yes, one day they will all understand that their lives have been built upon lies. And who will be there to offer wisdom? "Felix," shouts a woman from downstairs. "Dinner. Get down here." "In a few minutes. I'm working on my manifest." 5 more minutes, honey, but don't complain if your food is cold. "Alexa, please make a note in the memoranda persona under Judith DeCastro, aka Mom, aka Judy. This woman continues to blight my very existence, thinking that I'm the sort who needs guidance. One day, it'll be her. Her who needs me. Oh, how the tables will turn. Alexa, end note. Return to main entry. Who will be there to offer wisdom? It will be me
Felix,
shouts his mother from downstairs. What? I'm in the middle of important things, Judith.
I made macaroni and cheese tonight.
I don't care about... Wait, mac and cheese? Fine, I'll be right there. Alexa, end entry.
Hello, entire internet. It's Mr. Critically Accursed coming in at the beginning of this issue once again with a couple more of announcements. I've included, if you scroll down, I've included some links to associates and crew members of the podcast because they're also doing some cool stuff out there. And I want to point it out, and I want to make sure that I'm giving them the proper shout outs and support with what I'm doing with Horizon and a Critically Accursed podcast. So if you scroll down and pass all of the Critically Accursed social links, you'll see podcast crew and friends links, which includes me, Matt, who voices Recharge, his a link to his Twitch channel, and a link to his Twitter. There's also these same links for Danielle, voice of Sky Valor. Both have recently gotten really into streaming, but they're also great fun to follow on Twitter. So if you're following me, follow them on Twitter too. And if you're interested in video game streams, certainly follow them on Twitch. Speaking of streams, there is a streaming video game Discord that kind of grew as members of the podcast crew started getting more involved in streaming, and it is called We Play Games. There is an invite link down there as well. So if you're into streaming, meeting streamers, playing video games, join that Discord. If you're a member of Critically Discordant, you should also be a member of We Play Games. That's just how this works at this point. Last but not least, I felt that it would be very important and prudent for me to include a link to the Eterna podcast. I voice Riley Morheim on the Eterna podcast, and without Sean of An Eldritch Dream Games, his support and his acceptance of me in Eterna, I most likely would not be here doing any of this right now. So if you like Horizon and have never heard of Eterna or never listened to Eterna, go do that. Click on the link. Check them out. It's a Pathfinder podcast. I had a lot of fun playing in it, and you will have a lot of fun listening to it and listening to me speak more, because I don't do that enough. That's all the announcements I have this time around. So without further ado, here is issue number 10, Sky Valor. Enjoy. So, Danielle.
That's me.
That's you. When last we left off with the legacy, with Sky Valor, it was the end of the school year, and she had teamed up with her grandfather to try to hunt down a villain that your grandfather, the original Valor, had originally put into jail. One Acid Splash, spelled with 3 Y's.
3.
I won't tell you where the Y's are, though.
Oh no, it's in the splash.
It's in the splash. No one knows where it is. Why is the Y at the beginning? That doesn't even make sense.
It's silent.
It's silent.
We're foreign.
But you teamed up with your grandfather, and I think you found a warehouse or something where you encountered some goons and thoroughly thrashed them. And then you and your grandfather had a touching moment. So that was at the end of the school year, the prior school year. Where we're jumping ahead to now, the summer has passed, the beginning of the new school year has come and gone. We're jumping ahead maybe like 4 months or so to roughly October. What do you think, what does that time passage look like if we were to do some sort of montage in terms of just showing a scattering of panels to show the passage of time since the end of the prelude to a month into the new school year? What do you think? How does that look for Madison? How does this passage of time look for her?
Lots of normal stuff scattered in there. I kind of like because she's like super strong, so I just imagine if she went to a pool party, like her cannonballs would be just like make the whole pool like.
Well, yes, because she could fly, too, so she probably, like, jumps and then flies up and then flies into the pool.
So I picture her, like, maybe even at, like, a public pool with, I don't know, a couple friends or something, and she just jumps in full force. So that's, like, the first one, I think. because that would be in the summer. So hanging out with friends, doing pool things, but still don't forget she's a superhero. And then, now she was teaming up with her grandfather, so maybe they could be, kind of like investigating, maybe like, even just like studying news articles, seeing where they can track down Acid Splash.
So it sounds like you're describing maybe like a few panels showing her trying to balance a normal life. You described her hanging out with friends at a future public pool, but also doing the superhero things. We probably do see a panel of her and her grandfather sitting in front of like a future computer or like a crime computer, I guess.
Yeah, future crime.
Actually, it's probably not just her and her grandfather. Her dad's probably like looking over both their shoulders as you guys are just researching local crime to see if there's any hits on Acid Splash, because since his escape, he's been very surprisingly quiet. There's been no new leads.
Right. So they're probably searching.
Yeah, probably. And I think one of the things that would have come up from your encounter with the Goon Squad at the end of your prelude is that they were kind of just hired there to basically waste your time. To be perfectly honest, they were given some money to stand around and wait for you guys to show up. And they don't really, their connection to Acid Splash is fleeting and more or less non-existent. They didn't really have any solid information to give you guys on him. And he's been quiet since. And this has not sat well with your grandfather, because your grandfather knows for sure that Acid Splash is planning something big, and he wants to put a stop to it before it happens. Like, I almost imagine that your crime computer is maybe like in the basement of your house. It's something your dad had set up, I guess, for when you started getting into the legacy, maybe on the tail end of his peak at being Laser Valor. He had a supercomputer and a crime, a layer, basically, a hero layer.
Oh, yeah.
And he's maintained it for you to use, and your grandfather uses it now. So it's just like your mom calling up from upstairs, checking in to make sure you've actually done your homework that evening or something.
Yes. Like, you can do that after your homework. And then my grandfather's like, "Aww."
And your grandfather just quietly leans over, and there's a small speech bubble from him that says, "We're good for another 10, 15 minutes. Don't worry." And that's when your dad says, she's going to have my hide. I can't help you guys anymore. But he's like, only 15 more minutes, though.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, if you look into Acid Splash breaking free, I think one of the big things that is obvious that the news focuses in on, that the police report focuses in on, is that he didn't break free of his own volition. There was definitely someone who got into the super prison, and a couple of guards lost their lives, and it definitely seems like Acid Splash was broken out. And your grandfather is 100% sure that it was Kevin Splash, Acid Splash's son.
Kevin.
Also known as Mr. Splash at Horizon High.
Yep.
For those of you keeping up with our sick lore. So you already gave me the cannonball thing at the public pool. What I would like to hear from you is one more panel of Madison enjoying or trying to enjoy a typical teenage life away from the superhero business, but also one panel of her in the midst of doing something heroic.
Playing a sport.
Yeah, that's right. She is into sport balls, isn't she?
Yep, she is.
Yeah, what sport?
I think we decided that the first season she would be in basketball. I believe it was. I mean...
Mm-hmm. Right, because she's tall. She's taller.
She's taller, yeah.
Allegedly. It depends on who's writing the panel that day.
Well, I mean, even if she's not, she could fly taller.
Right.
Oh
right.
my gosh. Just one panel of, like, they're doing the height thing in school, in gym, and they're, like testing her height and weight, and she just, like, flies just a little bit to just get that next mark.
to get a bit taller, right?
Yeah.
But there's inconsistencies between panels because the person drawing the art's not paying attention. So on one, it gives her height as like, I don't know, 6 foot or something ridiculous. And then the next one is like 5'8".
Yeah.
They're just not paying attention to it.
Yeah, exactly. But so maybe like her dunking basketball for the one during maybe the first either like practice or the first game, depending on their schedule. I don't know. And then something heroic, rescuing a neighbor's kitty from the tree.
Yeah, that's fine.
Actually, she didn't discover it. Her like mom did, and she's like, "I gotcha. Hey, Madison, can you come out here real quick?"
Right. Like this little boy at the base of the future tree, just like looking up with sad eyes.
It's a holographic tree.
Well, I don't think it'd be holographic if there's a cat stuck in it.
Holographic cat.
It's a holographic cat. My Tamagotchi is stuck in a tree. Danielle, do you know what a Tamagotchi is?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if that was like before your time, because you're a child, or...
Not a child.
You're basically a child.
I'm what they call a cusper.
Okay.
I know 90s stuff.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I guess, depending on who you ask.
I mean, that's all we had in the 2000s.
It was our leftover 90s stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So Madison helps the neighbor boy get his cat out of a future tree. His future cat out of a future tree.
It's like half leopard.
Right. It's like half leopard.
Yeah.
It's a miniature leopard.
They have like weird breeds now.
Right. Then, like flipping the page to get started onto the story proper. So it's about mid-October, give or take, and we are approaching a national holiday. It's coming up on Remembrance Day. Remembrance Day is a holiday that came about after the end of World War III, kind of as like, oh, this awful war is over. Let's celebrate with a holiday to remember what we were fighting for, to remember the people that we lost and all of that. Since then, it's evolved into a better Thanksgiving, I want to say. So it's a holiday that focuses on remembering the things that you've lost, honoring the things that you have, and coming together as a community to look towards a brighter future. This year, Horizon City's kind of going all out on celebration. The Mayor Carmichael, is holding a ceremony in City Center. There's going to be, it seems like he's going to give a speech and unveil a new monument that's been constructed in City Center. In addition, the streets downtown are going to be lined with food stalls and games and like cheapo carnival rides. It's a big thing. Remembrance Day is going to fall on Friday. Unfortunately, school is still open. You don't actually have the day off for whatever reason. I guess the future is cruel.
It sounds like normal school.
It sounds like normal school, yeah. You only get like 5 days off a year, if you're lucky, if it's a leap year. So you do get out a couple hours early on Remembrance Day, or you will get out a couple hours early on Remembrance Day, so that you can like meet up with friends and family and go to the ceremony downtown, do all that cool stuff. Where we're going to pick up is, I think early that week, maybe Monday, we focus in on Madison. It sounds like she might be the type to have after-school activities, like with sports and stuff. If we see a few panels of her like wrapping up at the end of the day, you know, having stayed after school late, maybe like seeing her throw some stuff into a bag in a locker or whatever. Can you give me just like a really quick rundown of her packing up from school and doing whatever she does afterwards?
Yeah, she'll pack up her textbooks in her bag, go to her locker. I mean, maybe she's even one of those weird kids that shares it with like her best friend. Oh,
she has a best friend, you say?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Yeah. Who is your best friend?
I suppose I'm creating a name. Let's call her Alexis Lexi Smith. Like, her name is Alexis, but everybody calls her Lexi. That's been a popular name nowadays, so maybe it'll come back around by that time.
Yeah, no, I like it. Perfect. So I think we won't get into it too much today. I've made a note to reference it in the future, but maybe when Madison on this particular day goes to her locker to exchange books and pack her bag or whatever, she opens it up and we get to see the inside door of the locker just with a whole bunch of pictures on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
On top of like a pile of her books is it's a candy bar. It's Madison's favorite candy bar with a little note that says, "From Lexi, thinking of you," and then there's like a little doodle of a smiling cat or something.
Aw. That's so nice. Thanks, Lexi. She just says that, like, under her breath.
What is the candy bar? Because I just like putting you on the spot.
Sorry, there's long periods of no speaking when I'm trying to think, but...
It's okay. It gets cut. Don't worry.
Cool.
Take as long as you want.
I'm trying to think of a name for, like, a futuristic candy bar. Like, one that we don't
just do what I
quite
do
have now.
and put the word future in front of things that already exist.
Future bar. Mr. Future Bar. No.
Yeah, Mr. Future Bar. Future Hershey's.
They invented a new kind of chocolate. It's that ruby chocolate. Maybe we could just call it like a ruby bar.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a candy bar that would exist. A ruby bar. Yeah, I like it. It rolls off the tongue. So there's a nice ruby bar on there with a nice little note from Madison's good friend from high school. We get that moment, and I think the panel where she closes the door to her locker, we just kind of see Mr. Splash standing like just a few lockers down, like looking at her.
Can she have taken a bite of the bar right as she looks at him? Just a very uncomfortable moment.
Yeah, what's her face look like when she turns and sees him standing there?
Just like chocolate in her mouth, just being like, "Oh, hi." It's just very awkward and uncomfortable. Like I assume she'd probably feel a little bit weird eating in front of people.
But so Mr. Splash is standing there, his arms are crossed, and it's like he's just watching the hall, making sure no one gets up to shenanigans. And he gives you the sideways glance when you sheepishly say hi. I think he just looks at you with this constant look of disdain.
Yeah, sounds about right. So I just make more awkward eye contact, don't say anything, and then walk away.
So you maintain awkward eye contact. Do you walk away by passing in front of him?
Yeah, but before I do that, I stand there for a good, like, minute or two, just, like, I froze, like, the candy bar is in my hand, there's, like, chocolate in my mouth, I have not resumed chewing, I'm just, like, staring at him, he's staring at me, I do nothing, just stand there, and then I walk away.
Wonderful. I like that Madison's just a little bit awkward. Maybe a lot of bit awkward. It's great.
But she's still super, like, outgoing and popular and stuff.
Yeah. And we see Mr. Splash just, like, follows her with his eyes because she's still kind of maintaining awkward eye contact with him until she can't anymore.
She's still not chewing. She's still holding it in her hand. She just walks away.
So we see in the panel, we see of her, like, rounding a corner or whatever, the candy bar is just starting to melt. Maybe she's gripping it too hard or something.
For sure.
Yeah. But once you get out of that super awkward situation, is it off to, like, after school sports?
I imagine, like, I'm kind of modeling this after, like, what my school schedule was. Usually the sports started a little bit after school. So, like, I mean, you could go there early and stuff, but maybe on this day she would, what are the clubs? Like, all I thought was, like, a book club, but that seems a little bit lame.
Oh, in the future, they have clubs for everything. Any student can make a club. It just needs faculty approval.
It's like video game club.
There's 100% video game club.
Can it be like book club where they don't actually play video games? They just go home, play the video games, and go there and talk about them? you know, like how you talk in book club, you're like, oh yeah, you know, I really liked how this happened. It's like, you know, I really liked how Mario, like, jumped over the Goomba. It was really symbolic.
Right. So, yeah, 100%. And I think with a club like that, there's constantly these kids that show up to, like, video game club thinking that they're just going to, like, go in and play video games. But the only way this club got approved by the faculty is by, like, oh, we don't actually play video games in the club. We have intellectual discussions about the video games that we play at home. So we get a couple of panels of Madison hanging out in video game club and her talking about some video games with a whole bunch of nerds. And then we probably get some panels of her hitting up the basketball court for practice. Following that, some panels of her packing up and actually going home. I imagine she flies home. Probably she flies to and from school because she can.
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yeah, remember
sure.
we established that she holds her little lunchbox with her?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So she flies home, and I think landing and just about to walk inside her home, she can hear it through the door, through the front walls of her house, her parents going back and forth. It's a little difficult to hear without opening the door or entering, but it's definitely like voices are a bit raised.
So, is it like yelling? Or is it just like...
It's not screaming, because you'd probably be able to hear it from outside before walking in, but it's definitely...
Argumentative?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna listen to the door for a minute, and if I don't hear anything, then I'll open the door.
This goes on for a little bit, and I think as you, like, I imagine we get a panel of her, like, Scooby-Doo-esque pressing her ear against the door
exactly.
to listen. And cursing that she doesn't yet have super senses.
Oh, that's gotta thematically be the next thing.
Yeah, but I think if she focuses on listening, she can start making out the conversation. And she hears her father say, "It's like I told you, Michelle, this is a great opportunity for her." And your mom, Michelle, kind of cuts him off, saying, "You're always thinking about opportunities, but you're not thinking of her as someone who might not want to do this. She might not want to spend Remembrance Day doing that." And he goes back by saying, "You need to understand that this family, we have responsibilities." And she cuts him off again, saying, "It's always about responsibilities with you, Hank. Why don't you actually think about your daughter instead of your father?"
Oh.
Is that what Madison says? Is there just a little bubble that goes, ooh?
Yeah, except it's like quietly. And her eyes like get a little wide. I love how my character is so cartoony. So good.
It's a comic book. It should be.
I like how I just think in comic book.
You should. That's what we're here to do. So I think they continue going back and forth a little bit, kind of dancing around in argumentative circles, of course, without ever explicitly saying what started this conversation. And I think we do get to a lull in the conversation where Michelle she just says, "Hank, I can't even carry on like this right now." And the conversation kind of stops.
Well, as soon as that sort of silence happens, I'll think that it's a decent opportunity to open the door and walk in.
Opening the door, walking in. What do you do? They seem to be, I'm going to say, the front door probably opens to maybe a living room. You probably have a dining room. Mm-hmm. I imagine, I pictured their conversation happening from the kitchen and just echoing throughout the whole house. So they're probably in the kitchen nearby. So what do you do?
It's probably a pretty open concept. So it's probably pretty, it's like almost like a big room, but separated a little bit.
Yeah. There's windows in the walls and stuff.
They could probably see her right when she walks in, even if they're in a different room.
Yeah. So everyone makes awkward eye contact.
I figure she would try to act like she didn't hear anything and just, like her normal day. But I'm sure she stops for a second and looks at them and then tries to keep going.
Keep going where?
Well, where she usually would go, put her backpack down, I don't know, in her room or something.
I think as Madison starts making her way to just go to her room, she hears a little bit hushed her mother say, well, there she is. Why don't you just tell her all the plans that you have for her? And your dad responds, again hushed, by saying, maybe we let her settle in for a little bit. And your mom once again cuts him off for the third time this conversation by clearing her throat and saying, Madison, your father has something I think he wants to tell you.
Okay, be right there. She'll put her stuff down. I figure she probably won't hurry too much. I assume that she would want to wear something more comfortable around the house, pajamas or something, and then get changed into those and then go down.
So the scene she finds waiting for her in the kitchen is her mother seated at like a kitchen aisle. Maybe there's a bottle of wine open on the aisle and a glass that's either half full or half empty, depending on how closely you want to look at it. And her father, Hank, is leaning against the fridge with his arms crossed, kind of staring down at the ground. And when you walk in, your mother gestures at Hank like, oh, go on, she's here. Tell her how you've pre-planned her life. And Hank looks up at you, a little bit of a smile, but it's obviously forced.
I'll be like, what's going on? And I'm wearing bunny slippers and my pajamas in the kitchen. Like, why did you call me here?
Are there like cartoon animals covering your pajamas, or are they just like really ridiculous?
Yeah, something obnoxious. I don't know, maybe fruits.
Fruits? I love fruits, yeah. Fruity pajamas are great. Perfect.
It's got like grapes all over and stuff, and then she's wearing like her like bunny slippers, and she just walks in like, what's going on, guys?
Yeah, so your dad holds you in his awkward gaze for a moment before he says, honey, I've caught up with an old friend of mine, and there was an opportunity for you to be part of the Remembrance Day ceremony downtown. So I told him that the Valors would be happy to attend, and your mom cuts him off again by saying, I think what you mean, Hank, by be part of the ceremony is stand off to the side and act as hired muscle in case anything happens. Hank has trouble finding follow-up words. He kind of stutters or stammers a little bit by like, it's not Maddie. I know the mayor, and he asked me if he could have you standing at the ceremony. So I said, of course, because I figured that you would, right? And your mother again says, or maybe you just want to go to the ceremony with your family like a normal person. And they're both talking at you from different directions. What do you do? I think they keep going as well. Like talking at you, but against each other.
While I'm thinking?
Yeah, while you're thinking and not
I'm
talking.
just kind of thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're just going back and forth, talking at you and addressing you, but they're definitely just talking to each other and like starting to yell at each other, but through you. And we get a few panels of just like zooming in on you as you're thinking and caught in this really awkward cluster of a situation.
I mean, I probably don't actually need to do anything for this, but I was kind of just thinking about, after a while, just like, I was just thinking I would think for a while, and then maybe I can't even think over how much they're just going back and forth about what each of them wants me to do with my life, and then I just finally yell, just stop. Let me decide what I want to do with my life.
And I think when you yell stop, they both do stop talking. And we get that one nice, like, wide panel showing the three of you in the kitchen. And no one's saying anything anymore.
And I figure I I mean, when it's not that day, so I figure I'll just walk away and assume that I'm just thinking on it. I haven't made my decision then.
So you leave?
Well, I mean, we're just standing there looking at each other, and I told them, let me figure out my life, so I think that's probably a good cue to leave.
Yeah, that's fair. You can certainly walk off.
Maybe when she walks off, she might, go to her room and call Lexi. Because I figure Lexi, she probably tells her about her hero stuff, too, so I figured she might ask her what she thinks. I mean, if she knows her past and she knows, her, then she could probably make a better advisement than her parents can. So I figured they might talk it over a while. And
we might see a few panels of kind of just a series of montage of Madison doing kind of almost a typical teenage girl thing of being on the phone and just laying around in bed and walking around her room and having this back and forth with Lexi.
Maybe complaining about her parents a little bit.
Right. And based on the lighting in the room, we can see that this conversation goes on. The sun sets and then it gets darker. And then Madison flicks on a light in the room. And it's just a lot of time has passed as you guys are on the phone talking about this stuff.
And then it'll get off a tangent for a while. Lexi will talk about her dinner or something like that.
Right. And I think what we might see thereafter as maybe the week progresses is we might see a panel or two of Hank, your dad, approaching you at home and just offhandedly mentioning something about the ceremony at the end of the week. He probably at some point while you're making up your mind slips in there that oh, your grandfather would be so proud seeing you standing next to the mayor. Something like that. But we also get a panel or two of your mom doing a similar thing where she says that you don't have to feel pressured to live up to the name that your father and grandfather have built for you. That that you and her can go and get some funnel cake and maybe play a game or two. Probably not going on any of the rides because they'll probably fall apart.
I can fly if they fall apart.
Yeah.
Gosh, that sounds so fun.
As we approach the end of the week, the decision is ultimately in your hands. On one hand, your dad wants you to live up to being the hero, to owning the legacy, and to taking a very public stand in that capacity. But your mom is kind of leaning you're still just a teenager. You don't need to be the hero. You can it's okay to just be a teenager.
Yeah.
And I think depending on which way you lean, they will probably attempt to shift your labels in that capacity.
I assume that her friend probably wouldn't have much influence in that. I mean, I don't know.
That's a good question. Does Lexi have influence over you? You don't have to give it to her, but
Everyone.
It's entirely in your hands.
It says everyone, and I'm living by that.
I mean, it makes sense that your best friend would have influence over you. And you probably have influence over her.
Yeah. I mean, she might say, as a friend, she might be like, well, that's really cool. But on the other hand, she might be like, let's go get some funnel cake. Yeah.
So I think your friend takes the complete opposite approach. And when you're talking to her on the phone, she, at the tail end of this 4-hour-long conversation, she's just like, Maddie, why don't you just do neither? They're putting a lot of pressure on you. We can just go hang out. We don't even have to go to this stupid Remembrance Day ceremony. We can go watch a movie. We can just hang out. I can call some of my friends. Maybe we can get together with some boys.
Interesting. Third option.
Now, here's the kicker. We get to Thursday. We get to Thursday, and it's you have to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
And maybe you distance yourself from your parents for that day because they've just kind of inadvertently been bugging you all week. And leaving school, you find that you have a voicemail from your grandfather. And in the voicemail, he says oh, hey, just giving you a call. I know you're at school. You can call me back whenever. But the meat and potatoes of the voicemail is him saying, Hank told me that you'd be at the Remembrance Day ceremony, and I think that's a great step forward for the great hero that you're becoming, Maddie. So, I know that when I turn on the telly, that doesn't make sense. Who would say telly anymore?
Maybe it comes back.
Yeah. I know that when I turn on to see the ceremony, to see you there with the mayor, to see our symbol, why, that's gonna make everything, even if we can't find Splash soon. I think that means a lot. But I'm rambling, and I'm gonna go. Give me a call back when you have a chance. Love you. And he hangs up.
So what does it mean for influence and all that if I really want to reject them both, but then that gets me? And I don't really want it, like, I don't want to do it for my dad.
Yeah, I think in terms of your options, you could totally say, you could totally internalize, like, I'm not doing this for my dad, for his opinions of me. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm doing this for my grandfather. And attempt to reject your dad's influence.
And I think that, I mean, influence means that you care what they think, and I feel like, although I give them all influence, I feel like at this point, she wants to be her own person, but I think the one that matters most to her is her grandfather.
So, okay, so you, it sounds like you want to reject both of your parents, but still do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally fine. Before we get to, before we get to the die rolls, can you tell me how that kind of plays out? Like, it's Thursday. She has to make the decision when she gets home. She has to tell her parents, obviously. I mean, I guess she could just disappear and never talk to them. But I feel like there has to be a moment where, you know, she says to both of them, you know, I'm doing this. This is why. Maybe, maybe not.
I think it starts by her calling her grandfather back. And maybe just inviting him to be there. And saying, you know, I know Dad told you I'd do this, but I'm doing it for me because I think it's the right thing to do and not because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And just like having a conversation with my grandfather about how I don't like that they're trying to make my decisions as a hero for me. Maybe like a heart to heart about that kind of thing.
Yeah. Your grandfather first off says that he's going to be basically quote unquote working late, trying to follow up on the acid splash situation, which is why he's going to watch the ceremony remotely.
Oh. And
like if you really want him to be there, if you press it, he will totally drop what he's doing. But his inclination was like, I have an obligation to catch acid splash. I can kind of do both, so I'm going to do both. When you open up to him about how your parents are pushing you, he tells you that the legacy, the Valor legacy, means a lot to Hank, your father, as well. And your grandfather knows this, and he asks you not to be too harsh on him for it. You know, it's a big thing in the family, the legacy. And, you know, if it's driving your father's motives, the legacy itself drives your grandfather's motives. And he says that it drives your motives too. He kind of just makes that assumption. So he ultimately asks you to cut your dad some slack.
I'll just, yeah. I don't know. I'm not gonna, like, I figured it was kind of rhetorical, and even if it wasn't, I would take it rhetorically.
Right, you do that thing where you just kind of like, yes, great, yeah, yes, of course, right, yep, okay, I hear you, yep. And then you hang up and like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do anyways. Yes.
Well, she knows it means a lot to them, but that doesn't mean that she can't be her own person. So.
That's true. That is true. That's the core theming here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how does it play out with your parents?
She'll go home, and then I assume they do that weird staring thing again, and she'll just sit them down at the table, mm-hmm. and she'll say, you know, I made my decision. My decision is mine and mine alone, and I think that I should do it and be up with the mayor in the ceremony, but I'm not doing it for any reason other than I want to as a hero. And that, you know, what they want for me doesn't matter. What I want for me matters. So, just like that, I guess.
So I think you have this nice sit down with them, and you're pretty direct and you're pretty open. You know, you've thought about this all week. You've made up your mind, and they both have their own opinions on it. But I think the way in which you presented it is it's non-adversarial, but it's direct. You know, and I think you're sitting down and taking this moment to try to connect with your parents over this. Yeah. I think that I'm going to ask you to, it doesn't fit perfectly into this move, but I think this move can kind of apply to the situation in terms of rolling to see how well you get across and to see if they hear you. Because I think if they hear you, they'll lay off and we won't have to worry about any label shifts. You know, they'll be like, oh, you've made up your mind. This is why you're doing it. We understand. So to that sense, I think I'm going to ask you to roll. It's called Comforter Support on the basic move list. And like I said, I don't think this situation 100% applies to it, but I think it's one of the most fitting of the basic move selection. So I will ask you to roll 2d6 and add your mundane.
6. That's funny.
So that's a miss. 6
Mark
is
potential?
a miss. Yeah, you can mark a potential because you failed.
But you know, that's fine, because honestly, if they don't hear me, it just makes it more interesting later.
Yeah. So you talk to them, and I think that what ultimately comes across is maybe you're a little bit caught into the moment too, a little bit aggravated. So it does come across a little bit more adversarial. And your parents probably pick up on that. And they don't get mad at you. They turn against each other again. And like your dad says, see, she's going through with it. This legacy, the Valor legacy, it means a lot even to her. And he says, I knew I made the right call. And Michelle says, why are you taking this as a personal victory? This is our daughter. She's made up her own mind, even though I think you twisted her arm into it. And they kind of go back and forth like that. Wow. And I think since the roll failed, they don't really relent on their standpoints. So they do both try to exert their influence over you. Like your mom says, are you sure this is really what you want, honey? And your dad says, of course, this is what you want. This is the best thing for our name. And they both try to shift your labels.
Ooh. And I could try to reject it?
You could try to reject one. You could try to reject both. You could take both. It's up to you.
I'm going to try to reject both. And hope that at least one of them rejects.
People who play a lot of masks out there listening to this, I don't know if what I'm doing is 100% kosher, but I also don't think it really matters. I don't know if I could have 2 label shifts happen at the exact same moment due to one failed die roll, but I don't give a shit. I'm going to do it because I think it's interesting to make Danielle choose between her parents.
This is a very complicated situation that we're dealing with right here.
It's incredibly complicated. So, who are you rejecting?
I would like to reject them both.
Yeah, fuck your parents. They suck.
They both don't listen to me. I should have taken Lexi's offer, but my grandpa really wants me to do this.
Awesome. So, who do you want to start with?
My dad.
So you're starting with your dad. You look your dad in the eyes as he's just talking about you upholding the Valor legacy and him having made the right choice for the legacy and just going on about the legacy and what it means to him, his grandfather, and what it definitely means to, or his father, and what it definitely means to you. So give me 2d6 and tell me what you get.
I'm so sick of hearing this. Oh, that's not good.
What is it?
I just want to not have surprises before I tell you, so hold on.
Okay, sure.
Okay, never mind. It's a miss. 5.
Oh yeah, 5 is a total miss. So
potential?
you can mark potential again.
This is I didn't have any before this time, and now it's 2 in a row.
So on a miss, their words hit you hard. You mark a condition, and I adjust your labels. So your dad, he talks about the legacy, and he just hones in by saying to your mom, of course she chose to stand by the mayor at to make this appearance at the ceremony. She's a Valor. Being a Valor means something to her. She wouldn't just throw that away. That's our family. That is our family. That's me, that's her, it's her grandfather. And he really focuses in on like how callous it would be to just disregard that. And I think those words seem to hit you hard because you were on the verge of almost doing that.
I'll go hopeless because I really wanted to get through to him that, you know, it's not, I mean, our family is important, but he just won't stop talking about it. Like, it's the only thing. And he just won't listen to me. So I just feel like that's hopeless. And I feel like with my mom, it would be different because she kind of listened to me. She did say that it was my choice, but he was influencing it. So I think it might be a little different for that.
Yeah, that's fair. So here's also what happens. Because you failed, not only do you mark a condition, I shift your labels anyways.
Oh, right.
And
yes.
your dad was trying to increase your savior.
Great.
However, your savior's already at a +3.
So I get another
condition. It can't
condition?
go higher than that. So you get another condition.
Oh, I'm also guilty. Okay.
Yeah, because he talks about you being this hero, and maybe you don't feel like you're living up to it anymore. Maybe you feel like you at one point had a full handle on this, and you keep hearing him talk about being a hero, like what you're doing isn't enough. And yeah, it hits you. That said, we then turn to your mom, who was also trying to exert influence on you. So your mom's talking back to your dad during all of this, really honing in on you being an individual, being young, and that he's just trying to make all these choices for you, that he's clinging to this name that his father built and all of this. Do you want to accept your mother's influence, or do you want to reject her as well?
No, this is a tough one since it happened after the other one. So, I mean, I'm feeling guilty about not upholding the name like he wants now. But I would take it. I just don't know what that means for the character if I take it as far as, like, how she feels. Like, her stance on everything. I don't know what that means to take that.
I think how it's framed depends on the choice you make. So if you choose to take her influence, she's clearly talking more or less about the exact opposite of what your dad's talking about. She's trying to describe you as a regular person and not so much a hero. So if you decided to roll with that, I would imagine that implies Madison feeling bad about her not living up to her father's expectation, but then finding some comfort in her mother's words by saying maybe that she doesn't have to. However, if you rebel against your mom at this point, it's almost like Madison spiraling, and like she's maybe starting to feel like she can't live up to either of their expectations.
Okay.
So really, your choice as the player frames things.
So, I think at this point, especially like after just feeling like that, she'd probably accept it.
So then, just as I said, your mom counters these points and says that your dad's putting too much pressure on you to live up to this heroic name, and she really hones in like, Madison is just a teenage girl, and you're robbing her of that experience. And yeah, if you accept your mother's influence, it does sound like that's a little bit of a comfort. So what you can do is you can shift Savior down by 1 and increase Mundane.
You know, I should have done hers first.
Yep, I know. I knew that when you chose to do your dad first. I was like, yeah, well.
Aww. So Mundane up and Savior down. Oh my gosh, if I would have done it the other way, I would have been fine.
Then you wouldn't have the extra condition, but that's fine. So your Savior's currently at a +2, I believe, and your Mundane's at a +1?
Yes.
Perfect.
It's where it originally was.
Yeah. So your parents engage, they're talking at each other and kind of through you, as I imagine Madison's just absorbing in what they're saying. And from the way you described this scene, it sounded like she walked into this room having a clear idea of what she wanted to say and how she wanted this to go. And at this point, it seems like she's been kind of rocked around the room a bit.
Yeah.
So, Danielle, at this point, I would want to ask you, what does the last panel of this session's comic book look like?
Well, I think after feeling like she can't live up to her dad's expectations and feeling guilty about that and hopeless about that, and her mom saying that, you know, it's okay if she doesn't, and she could be a normal person, and her mom's words hitting her like that, maybe I think she would do something regarded as normal, and I'm thinking maybe she would, like, try knocking on Lexi's door and try hanging out with her, maybe even just listening to music with her, like, in her room, even if they're doing stuff separately. I think maybe she would just wanna, she's hopeless, she's guilty, she probably just wanted to get out of there and do something normal. So I think that the panel might be, like, her knocking on her door, and then leading into Lexi opening the door and them sitting in her room listening to music or chatting about magazines or, whatever they do. The e-magazines.
Yeah. The panel's basically an image of a teenage girl's bedroom, and the two of you are hanging out in it.
Yeah.
Really completely normal.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly normal scene, and I think that pairs up well since your mundane just increased.
Nice.
Yeah, perfect.
I like it.
And with that, unless there's anything else you want to add.
I think that's it.
Good. Then with that, this incredibly emotional episode issue of the podcast.
I feel it.
You feel it? Yeah.
I feel it.
I just want mom and dad to stop fighting.
I just want to be a normal kid, but also like a superhero.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's it. That's all she wrote.
Hello, this is Grandpa Valor. Or Scott's grandpa. It's really hard to tell sometimes. The only thing that's for certain is that I'm old. Anyways, thank you for listening to my granddaughter's episode. It was a pleasure to have you here. She's growing into such a fine superhero, and I'm so excited to see what this ceremony has in store for her and for our legacy. I'm sure that she will uphold all the traditions of the Valor legacy and do myself and her father proud. More importantly, I hope that you will stick around, that you show up to Remembrance Day. It'll be really fun, and get to witness my granddaughter, Sky Valor, in all her super heroic glory. I'm sure that things will go splendidly at the Remembrance Day ceremony and that nothing bad will happen whatsoever. But if it does, just know that there's a Valor around to save the day.
No, but seriously, thank you guys for listening. The next few issues, I don't really know how many there will be, but I'm thinking about 5, will be the dramatic conclusion to Volume 1 of our Horizon storyline. So, like, you've been here for 10 issues. I'm assuming you want to stick around for the big meat and potatoes of our stupid little podcast. So, as always, contact information for people in the podcast should be in the description of this issue, wherever it is you're listening to it. Reach out to us if you have something you want to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you in the next one. Take care.